Oh, God. All I ate was coffee and stromboli. Hello, students. Professor Tuna here. Today, we will be doing a critical analysis of Freddy Got Fingered through a Marxist lens. For those of you who are uninitiated, this early 2000s gross-out flick is known for being exceptionally bad. Like, list of films considered the worst Wikipedia article level of bad. However, every critic is essentially wrong about Freddy Got Fingered. Is it neo-Dadaist? Is it hyper-surrealist? Is it the bottom of the barrel? No, they are all wrong. Freddy Got Fingered is, at its core, a movie about capitalism. Quick rundown, Freddy Got Fingered was written, directed, and stars Tom Green. Imagine like a mix of Jackass, Andy Milonakis, Eric Andre, and your favorite prank stars on YouTube. But he was doing all that in the 90s before everyone else. Freddy Got Fingered, it's often described as a very subversive and weird and gross movie, but that's what really makes it special. It's hated by critics, and it's very polarizing among audiences. Just take a look at the Letterboxd reviews, and you'll see what I mean. If you haven't been blessed with the luck of writing a critical analysis in your local community college English class, don't worry, let me fill you in. So a critical analysis is basically when you look at a work through a particular lens. There's a shit ton of these on Google Scholar. Feminist critiques of Terminator, racism in Skyrim, or you can always read the ever-popular psychoanalysis of insert character name here. Spoiler, everyone on the hero's journey has generalized anxiety disorder. Critical analyses as a whole are just really fun to read and the literal bedrock of the YouTube video essay community. And today, our focus will mainly be on Freddy Got Fingered and how its characters toil under the forces of capitalism and how they experience things like class conflict and alienation. And don't ask me how many times I've watched this movie. A lot. Opening scene, Gour's just laying in bed, looking at his drawings, his doodles, just laughing away.
And then the beavers came. The beaver started yelling at another beaver. The beaver started yelling at the other.
This is, of course, a metaphor for the working man and his labor. We cut to a chaotic scene in the mall where Gour is seen skateboarding in and out through patrons. There's choppy editing. There's crazy cuts. It kind of looks like crap. But above all, it is a direct allusion to the 1929 Dziga Vertov film, A Man with a Movie Camera. This is obviously considered one of the greatest works of Soviet filmmaking. And also, while Gour's there, he is intentionally disrupting the flow of capital in the American mall, a lasting symbol of suburban Americana. Our boy Gordy, he meets his parents at the bus station because he is finally moving out and going to LA to start his brand new job at the cheese sandwich factory.
You're a big man now. You got a job, goddamn real job, Gourd. And you finally gave up on those stupid doodles.
They're not stupid. They're not stupid.
I'm sorry, Tom Green says it in a very particular way, and now I say it like that.
I'm not going to Hollywood just to work in a cheese sandwich factory. I'm going to Hollywood to shop my drawings. I'm going to be a famous animator.
Cheese sandwich factory. But yeah, they're glad he's moving out, and to Gordon, he's happy that he can attempt to at least pursue his dreams of becoming an animator in Los Angeles. His parents give him a car in the hopes that they never have to see him again.
It says #1 son on the license plate. That's me. I'm the #1 son.
What about me, Mom?
You're #1 son, too.
But how come Gourd gets a LeBaron and I don't?
It's because they love me more than they love you.
No.
But more cynically, under capitalism, cars are a tool to drive capital and create physical racist barriers around red line neighborhoods. And this narrative also fits the very car-centric and segregated Los Angeles that Gourd will be moving to. Very early on, like barely even 10 minutes into the movie, Gourd attempts farming, if you want to call it that.
What are you doing to that horse? Look at me, Daddy, I'm a farmer. Oh, this is fun.
And manufacturing work, and he quickly realizes that this kind of labor is highly exploitative. Gourd literally loses his mind on the assembly line.
Look at me, look at me. Look at me, 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 look at me. Ding dong! Ding dong! Ooh, you can't hurt me! You can't hurt me! Not with my cheese helmet! Ah!
He's babbling. He's literally lost his marbles at the prospect of this social alienation. He just cannot hold it together from being so exploited. He begins to experience what is Marx's theory of alienation, the economic and social disconnect from one's labor and fellow workers. Oh fuck, I gotta fix my collar. We'll touch more on Marx's theory of alienation later in the video when it becomes a larger plot point. It's also important to note that manufacturing work in the United States is becoming increasingly rare due to offshoring. Tariffs aren't gonna fix that shit. For the next part of the film, we're introduced to how Freddy Got Fingered views the value of art under capitalism. In the free market, the value of art is solely dependent upon who wants to pay that amount. And that's regardless of things like how much work and resources were put into it. At the end of the day, whoever wants to pay X amount is what the price will be. I know most well-meaning people, we can all agree that art is inherently a societal good, but in the free market, art is mainly seen as a hobby that's rarely profitable. The capitalist would argue that art is only valuable when it's able to turn a profit.
Do me a favor, leave me alone.
The profit incentive, along with risk-averse investments and consumer demand, are what the capitalists claim drive innovation and the economy. And in the world of Freddy Got Fingered, creative characters are literally subjected to the whims of profitability rather than the overall effort put into their work. Here's how Marx determines the overall value of socially valuable commodities. Commodity has a value because it is a crystallization of social labor. The greatness of its value or its relative value depends upon the greater or less amount of that social substance contained in it. That is to say, on the relative mass of labor necessary for its production. The relative values of commodities are, therefore, determined by the respective quantities or amounts of labor worked up, realized, or fixed in them. So translating this to Freddy Got Fingered, it shows that the characters that often put high amounts of labor into their work often won't see those same values returned. Next, we meet the character Mr. Davidson, played by, who was that nerdy kid from the Breakfast Club that, like...
This is a very nutritious lunch. All the food groups are represented. Did your mom marry Mr. Rogers? No, Mr. Johnson. Huh.
Anthony Michael Hall, thank you. We meet Mr. Davidson. His character is a metaphor for the bourgeoisie. He is a high-level executive at an animation studio that Gour ultimately wants to sell his cartoon to. Cartoon 2.
Listen, you tell Hanna-Barbera to go fuck themselves, okay? I got 12 Korean teenagers in a tiger cage that can draw a fucking dog wearing a cape.
It is unclear if he outright owns the studio, if he's a stakeholder, or if he's just a high-level executive. Regardless, his interests directly align with the capitalist class and not people like Gour. And to show how oftentimes unreachable an artistic career can be for the average proletarian, Gour has to go to these extreme lengths just to even have a conversation with this man.
Okay, I'm looking for a Mr. Dave Davidson. Are you Dave Davidson? No.
Including pissing off Drew Barrymore.
You're a skinny loser! Someone call security!
Don't call them!
Shit! Ah!
And through these like wacky schemes that Gour has to come up with just to get like a basic face-to-face conversation with Mr. Davidson, it shows how art is essentially inaccessible to the average person and that art is reserved for only the most well-connected and for those that can spend the most time to perfect their craft. He sees Gour's cartoon as worthless and unprofitable despite its inherent creativity.
Drawings are pretty good, but it doesn't make any sense, okay? It's fucking stupid.
You know, baboon eyes. The scene ultimately ends with Mr. Davidson getting into his very fancy-pantsy sports car, highlighting the class differences between these two characters.
I got a job at the cheese sandwich factory. Cheese sandwich factory? Oh, that's really funny, Gour. No, that's true. I gotta make the cheese sandwiches. I got rent and...
To his father's dismay, Gour moves back in to perfect his craft and truly figure out how to make a profitable cartoon. Here we're also introduced to the main conflict of the film. Is it a father-son conflict or is it a landlord-tenant conflict? Jim, played by Rip Torn, is ultimately Gour's, well, first of all, his father, but most importantly, he acts as his landlord. He is not a good dude in the movie. The inherent complexities of Jim's character shows that the Marxist class structure isn't bosses and workers, bourgeoisie and proletariat. It's a little bit more hazy than that, as you have classes like the petite bourgeoisie, which is mainly reserved for like landlords, as Marxists see landlords not as workers or producers, but people that generate wealth just from owning stuff. And what makes this case especially hazy is that some landlords have, real jobs outside of, owning a piece of land. Much like the character Jim, he works full-time on top of acting as Gour's landlord. He's simultaneously subjected to the whims of capitalism while also subjecting those same whims against his own son. In continuing with this theme of Marx's theory of alienation, Jim is just an overbearing, excessively controlling landlord, domineering over his tenant. He controls Gour's diet, he controls his exercise.
I'm eating a chicken sandwich.
No, you're not. You can either eat that goddamn roast beef or you can go to bed. But you two stop making so fucking much noise. We're sleeping.
If you ask me, the proletariat should be allowed to build a skateboard ramp at midnight. And also he throws a skateboard at someone's broken leg. 10 out of 10 comedy. The film also has some sharp critiques of the privatized healthcare system, which it's no surprise considering Tom Green is Canadian. Marxists see the existence of private healthcare as an inherent contradiction within the system because a competent hospital cannot prioritize patients and profit at the same time. At one point, a privately run hospital will end up sacrificing quality of care for shareholder profits. And here we're introduced to the film's love interest, Betty. She is a receptionist at the hospital and an aspiring rocket scientist.
A rocket scientist. To tell the truth, yeah. Well, okay, amateur rocket scientist.
Despite her blatant geniusness, she's forced to work a low-paying menial job rather than pursue her passions full-time. And here Gour meets his friend in what I believe is the triage room. And this hospital is very clearly underfunded. It's loud.
Could you please just shut the fuck up? I am fucking pregnant!
The room is crowded and there's no staff to be seen despite everyone being annoyed and in pain.
You're handicapped.
And this scene reaches a breaking point when Gour literally has to be a midwife and help a woman give birth. Keep in mind though, it is unlikely this character knows anything about midwifery.
Call the doctor, you fucking asshole!
Oh, it's okay, I'm a doctor.
No!
But he successfully helps this woman give birth to her child in what is the most heartwarming and just genuinely touching scene in the whole movie. I'm kidding, every critic hated this scene.
Don't ever come back, ever.
Look, I saved the day.
You did not save the day.
What's going on?
Next, we see Gour just so desperate for money. The dude tries looking for buried treasure.
I'm underwater. Look, I found a treasure.
A treasure? That's soap on a rope.
And after receiving another series of abuse from his landlording father, he agrees to find a job.
I can walk backwards fast as you can. I can walk backwards fast as you can. I'm the backwards man, the backwards man. I can walk backwards fast as you can. I'm the backwards man, the backwards man. Backwards man, the back.
Dad.
What? God, name are you doing, you stupid little man? Wait. Did you get a job?
I have nothing to say about this. I just find it really funny. We are now on to the fancy restaurant scene, which I think is one of the funniest, overall scenes in the whole movie. It's like you've seen that Victorian era poster of Marx's various class structures. And at the bottom is we feed all, we serve all, goes through all the various classes of workers. And all the way at the top is, we'll eat for you. Yeah, Gour's at that restaurant. He's on a date with his girlfriend Betty, wanting to impress her by pretending to be a tycoon and benefit from these inherent perceived class privileges. And while Gour is screaming into his cellular phone on a pretend phone call, acting like he's firing an employee.
Clean out your locker at the club, Bob. You're fucking fired! I'm talking about 40 million fucking Deutschmark here, Bob! 40 million fucking Deutschmark!
impressing everyone else in this restaurant. You know, the keeping up with the Joneses type of attitude that comes with living in a advertising dense consumer economy. But unbeknownst to Gord and Betty, Jim is also in the restaurant. And he talks down to the waiter due to his perceived lower class status. And once he overhears Gord absolutely just wailing into the phone, they start arguing because he thought Gord was at work. In this physical fight, it is a literal display of class conflict and revolution. This is a fancy restaurant! And here is where the film goes more in depth into Marx's theory of alienation. So essentially, Marx's theory of alienation focuses on how the proletariat are inherently disconnected from many aspects of living in a civilized world. You're disconnected from your labor because you have no say in the workplace and you're pushed around. You're disconnected socially from your fellow workers and everyone around you because you're forced to compete with your friends and neighbors over the small slice of profit that's doled out to the working class. And when you include the state in this equation, you're also forced to compete with your same loved ones just for basic resources, things like public assistance, affordable housing, traffic. Here we see Gord experiencing the worst of this alienation. He gets his keyboard smashed, he gets arrested, his drawings get ripped up. He's even separated from his once loving family, now in this landlord-tenant agreement. Feeling so broken, he gets another job making cheese sandwiches, being completely at rock bottom. And here in the movie, seen as a failure over his refusal to conform to the world around him. He is a creative person that's just forced into menial, back, and brain-shattering work.
I ordered a cheese sandwich and there's hardly any cheese in here.
We can't have people complaining that there's not enough cheese in the cheese sandwiches now, can we? I mean, if there's no cheese in a cheese sandwich, it's basically just 2 slices of bread. If word of that were to get out, well, I could lose my job.
I'm sorry, but when he's mopping the tables with the mop, that kills me. But our boy Gord has a breakthrough when he sees Betty on TV with her rockets. He realizes that she was right all along because throughout the movie, she has always valued her passions, rocketry and more than financial clout or getting ahead of everyone. As corny as it is, he comes to realize that love and sincerity are powerful forces stronger than the gravity of social and economic alienation.
Do you think that I pay you to stand around watching TV? Get back to work.
And in an odd twist of events, Gord comes to make peace with the capitalistic system. He rushes down to Mr. Davidson's office and presents a brand new cartoon, one that conforms enough to Mr. Davidson's concept of profitability, but it's still weird enough to be a product of Gord. And what makes him come to terms with all this and selling out is $1 million check, which, can you blame him?
But with that kind of creativity, I'm completely comfortable greenlighting this fucking project. I'm gonna write you a check right now, partner, for, I don't know, how's $1 million sound to you, huh?
Although high paid and in a loftier position than most other workers, he is still an employee of this animation studio, but regardless, he is now free of his father's landlording domineering.
I got $1 million for my little drawings!
No.
For my little drawings!
No, not my plan. Give me my plan, Gord.
Don't you see? I don't have to take his crap anymore.
And if you ask me, I don't think Gord sold out to make Zebras in America. Times are tough, and you gotta make that bag. You guys ever heard of Raid Shadow Legends? And this theme of making peace with the traumatic and harmful forces in your life also continues with Gord and his father. They decide to make peace after Jim gets sprayed an elephant spung. And after learning that Gord made $1 million, Jim realized that his son now sits on a higher level on the economic ladder, making him realize, in his twisted sense of morals, maybe my son is all right.
No, not just how to whack off an elephant. I learned to believe in myself.
I am proud of you.
I do think it's kind of weird that a movie built upon Marxist principles sells out to the capitalists at the end. It's as if this movie was never intended to be a Marxist work. No, that's not it. One of the guys on Red Letter Media summed this up really well, that Gour getting $1 million is a metaphor for Tom Green being given like $14 million to go make a movie. And sure, he did conform a little, but in that little conformity, he was able to still make something really weird and subversive.
It's just part of the process of filmmaking. You know, there's a lot of checks and balances when someone gives a kid from MTV $18 million to go like direct, write, shoot. You know, that's the budget of the movie. I didn't give me that, but the budget of the movie, they've spent $18 million, you know.
And I just wanted to include a section on my just closing thoughts on this movie because it's sincerely one of my favorites. Like, I still remember when I was a rambunctious teenager and I watched this movie. I didn't fall in love with it the first time, but it really just stuck with me. And in multiple rewatches over the last, like, decade, I've really come to, like, sincerely love Freddy Got Fingered. If Letterboxd had a top 5, it'd be my 5th spot every single time. Like, in our current media environment where we're just like bombarded with like shit left and right and how there's really no time to really think or breathe, it's so refreshing to watch something, especially something that's as stupid as this, and just have it really like stick with you in your heart. As I was really falling in love with this movie, I came to realize like, wow, maybe the nostalgia critic and Robert Ebert don't know shit. And this movie, it also asks like some really interesting questions when you think about its legacy. Like, what's left of a shocking piece of art when the audience just can't be shocked? And what is the audience supposed to take away when they're no longer surprised? I think of a movie like The Grudge 2. I know, real... I'm picking on a real heavy hitter in cinema. A movie that's just full of cheap jump scares and no real tension. It's like a bad horror movie. And when you remove the subversiveness, when you remove the scary jump scares, there's really nothing left to it. It's flaccid. And thinking of the staying power of Freddy Got Fingered, one would think that things like meme culture, really gross websites, and just shock humor going mainstream, you would think a lot of this stuff would fall flat today, but shockingly it doesn't. When you remove the most subversive elements of a Tom Green joke, it still has the anatomy of just a well-designed joke. The dude has fantastic comedic timing and sense of surprise. Like, in a lot of the jokes from Freddy Got Fingered, you have just a simple structure of a setup, the implied audience expectation, and the surprise. Like, take the Proud moment, for example. Tom and Rip Torn are both just satirizing like these overly sentimental comedies that were way too prevalent in the early 2000s and late 90s. And as they're repeating proud back and forth to each other, that's not supposed to be funny. That's not the punchline, even though I find that funny. Like, that's not supposed to be funny.
You made your daddy proud.
So proud.
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 What's funny is when Gour drives off, almost hitting someone and screaming, and it's that breaking of the tension and the surprise is what creates the humor.
Get the fuck out of the way!
And you see that example all throughout Freddy Got Fingered. And I'm not even mentioning Tom Green's like range of delivery that sits anywhere from like, he can be deadpan and just say things straightly to you. He can be goofy. The dude has a wide range and he's not given enough praise for it. Personally, I think it's really cool that we as a culture are reaching a point where Freddy Got Fingered is no longer seen as universally bad, but rather more debatable and worth discussing as a piece of artistic intent. I mean, a lot of people still think it's bad, but at least now you can have a conversation. I recall reading one of the best like contemporary reviews of the movie came from A.O. Scott of the New York Times. Read his stuff, by the way, he's fucking great. And it's as if he was seeing into the future when he was writing this review. Deep down, he knew that audiences would be able to see past all the wackiness and the gross elements of this movie for what it really is. Just a series of really good and surprising gags. I also just love discussions of, cultural reappraisal and assessing a work's legacy, because We finally reached a moment in time where a lot of the stuff that like I grew up with and stuff I watched when I was a kid and a teenager, it's now at that point where we're asking, is this worth remembering? I can assure you, American Beauty did not make the cut. And I actually really love that on places like Letterboxd, people are actively having these conversations as should we remember these things and how should we remember them in the decades moving forward. If Freddy Got Fingered is remembered in another 25 years from now, I think that would be really special.